Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today, two artists reach into the pile of TV, movies, games.
Occasionally comics.
To find
General
out.
art. To find out what's worth taking with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're today talking about the newest Thor movie, the Avenger with the most fucking movies, Thor. This is Thor 4? 4? You want to call it that? Thor Love and Thunder. We're excited to talk about this today because I think that this is a hard one to talk about, of course, because you have the first two Thor movies, which are, in my opinion, the just some of the worst of the Marvel universe. The first one's fun.
That. It's always been like that in the Iron Man sequels for me, of just like bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, and you're just kind of like, that's not, this isn't what it should be, you know? And I think that Thor 1 was good because it had Kenneth Branagh directing, and I think he added some fun flair to this, but that's the most fun you have in Thor 1. And then Thor 2 is so damn rough. I'm so sorry if you watched it. It's one of those things where it's just like, this is just rough. And I feel so bad for who's the villain? Who plays the dark elf there?
Malekith, played by Chris Eccleston.
It's like Chris Eccleston comes into a Marvel movie. You're like, oh, hell yes. And it's Thor the Dark World. You're like, no, please. And then we have the revival with and can you pronounce it first so I don't mispronounce? Taika Waititi is directing. He directed Thor Ragnarok, which was this huge reset for the Thor,
for better or worse.
For better for worse, for what Thor was. And I enjoyed it because it's fun and it's a fun take on the character instead of like no take on the character or, you know, like being boring like Iron Man 3.
I always viewed it as like fun but shallow.
Yes.
Just like a lot of fun, super entertaining, but it's also Marvel Studios just admitting they have no idea what to do with Thor, so fuck it, we'll just do whatever.
We'll nuke it. And I kind of like that they've leaned into that in this movie. They're not shying away from the huge restart. This feels like Taika is doing a trilogy here almost, you know, like, because I'm sure he's getting another Thor movie after this, is that like he is continuing his story here. It's not really anybody else's story. I mean, the Guardians of the Galaxy are involved now, but like no one else's story is involved with this. And I kind of dig that. I kind of dig that these feel Thor here, except for the beginning, feels like a classic Marvel movie where it's like not a shit ton of crossovers and multiverse and everything we've had this year, you know, which is multiple multiverse movies. We just have a straight just Thor adventuring around, you know, in space, doing space Viking stuff, which they're obviously leaning into here. That they were like, oh yeah, he's the space Viking, and you're like, okay, that's what we're going with, you know, like that's what we're gonna lean into, which I'm okay with. I am okay with it. Deshaun, I know I think both of us kind of walked out of this theater not like cheering or anything, but I did enjoy this.
To be perfectly honest, I came out of it being like, it's very middle of the road. It's very rough. And to be honest, in the couple of days it's only gotten worse for me the more I've thought about it.
I want to say, yes, I had fun with the movie. So guys, please, it's a comedy. It's a straight up comedy. This is like, all the other Thor movies were like sort of comedies, especially the first one is like sort of a comedy, and Thor Ragnarok has some very serious elements, but is of course comedic. This just fully leans into it. I want to say that this is a comedy with scary Christian Bale bits sprinkled in, you know, like this is like, you're just like, there's no earth-shattering thing going on here other than they kill Zeus, you know, like you're just like, there's no other earth-shattering events going on here, and other than the ending, which we will talk about And I think that's important to this movie lasting a little bit. Is that the problem with reviewing comedies is it's hard because if you find something funny and somebody doesn't, you can't be like, as a critic, no, that wasn't funny. You know, like, unless you can deconstruct it and be like, the setup for that joke didn't pay off, you know, like stuff like that. That's the way to review jokes sometimes, is being like, yeah, did they set this up? Did this, like, this... I want to say my number one observation from this is that this felt like, and you might think I'm stretching here, a Mel Brooks movie, you know, where this was a straight up comedy that was like setting up scenes, like a Mel Brooks thing where they were like, okay, our character's coming in and we're going to set up a whole scene and let the comedy fucking play in that scene. And that's kind of what Mel Brooks does a lot. And I think that's kind of what's going on here, you know, like, is that it's a lot of like set pieces to play with jokes, you know, like just being like, all right, let's see what works here in this scene joke wise, you know, like, and I think that's the thing about this movie, is that if you don't find it funny, there's very little else going on to make you be like, wow, I like Thor. So it's yeah, go ahead.
It's funny you say that because I didn't find a lot of it funny.
Really?
Now,
I knew you wouldn't, because I was like listening to the goats scream and I was like, this is stupid. And then there was several moments that I was like, these goats are pretty fucking funny. You know, like, but I was sitting there going, Deshaun is going to fucking hate these goats. Like, I was like,
the first time it was funny, like it garnered a chuckle, but then they kept using it and using it.
I don't know. I lost it when they, like, the big dramatic moment of them coming through towards the dark matter and there's like nothing, and then you just hear like from very far away, and then they burst through. I don't know why that worked. It's like a lot of the other times I was like groaning a little, but then like that part fucking got me.
I see it as like no different than like all the other times, like Ragnarok like undermined any moment that had any gravitas with a fucking gag. And that's sort of my issue all encompassing, is that I feel like Love and Thunder learns all the wrong lessons from Ragnarok.
They where it's just like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing these dramatic scenes kind of spliced throughout and now keep it like, you know, moving. And jokey, which, you know, going into it knowing it's a comedy helps a little bit, but so much of it just like came off as flat to me. It might be easier to enjoy if it was balanced out a little more, because on paper there's a lot of like serious elements to it, and I'm not saying I wanted a grimdark Thor movie, but when you're pulling from Jason Aaron's run, it's like, yeah, there's levity in that too, but there's actually some like weight to this narrative that is missing in this film, because not only is it focused on he's and ha-has, but it's also really slapped together and feels super compromised by the edit, more so than a Marvel film in a while. So let's talk about there's a couple things to talk about here, and I want to place them out first. First, adaptions. We're going to talk about the adaptions. Second, we're going to talk about how rushed this movie sort of feels. You know, like how it feels like there's, I mean, obvious from the long list of VFX teams behind it, but like there's a very rushed feel to this that I feel wasn't needed. We're working on the 4th Thor film. And it's the, I think this is the 44th going into 55th hour of content in Marvel just this year. You know, like with Thor Love and Thunder, I think it passes 45 hours of straight Marvel content. Like, please breathe, you know, like make this movie, but like let it breathe. You have all the money in the world. What are we rushing around for? You know, like,
like because good and bad, Marvel's never, other than like what might not look too good now just because we've had the MCU for so long, Marvel's never really had much of a problem with its effects, even in its weaker movies.
Yeah.
the effects here.
I mean,
are
it
like,
starts. I think we start to see the decline in this phase. I think we've reached a point where we're making too much Marvel content that we are ending up with some kind of oversight. Like Kevin Feige isn't approving every shot anymore,
and it's starting to like make other complaints seem so insignificant. Like, forget the stupid green screen shot in Black Widow. The fucking shot of Thor as a baby running with his CGI mother at the start of this film when Korg is narrating his life was so fucking bad.
And I mean, of course, Hemdel's head was straight up, like Hemdel's son's head, which has become a meme now, is
straight out of like, oh my God.
It's straight, first off, yeah, it's straight out of a 2000s home movie. You know, like that they were like able to use Windows Movie Maker to make somebody's head appear. Like literally that bad. I don't know why this was approved. It's one of those effects that you're like, guys, we could have reshot this. This looks like something we could have reshot.
That's some like early 2000s Disney Channel original movie shit.
Yes. That was my thought there. And it's weird because there's so many VFX teams on this movie. There's moments that look incredible in this movie. Like the God Chamber is one of the coolest VFX moments in the phase 4 of just showing off like random gods, and they all look so good, and even from far away it looks so good. And still there's the floating head 20 minutes earlier, you know, like and then there's Gore's like teeth cage, which looks incredible, and you're like, and all the symbiote, and yeah, that's another weird thing going on, is that they kind of straight up do symbiote creatures in this movie. I thought that was super interesting,
but they can't. But that's also sort of the issue of like, that was always going to come up because the Necrosword is tied to like symbiotes and like symbiotic lore in the Marvel universe, but you can't do that. So you'll keep like the aesthetic, but you won't name it.
I kind of enjoyed that because I totally thought they were going to like be like, it's the Necrosword, whatever, it's got dark powers, you know, like and like they kind of do in Eternals, which, by the way, why was there so much Eternals imagery in this movie? That's another thing I want to point out. So much imagery from Eternals. So many of the big what are they called?
Celestials.
Celestials. I was going to call them celestial beings, and I was like, that ain't right. But Celestials. There was literally 2 of them that watched them leave the god pantheon. They send another giant statue head flying at one point. That's one of the Celestials, and like several other times where they're referencing that, and you're just kind of like, what? Like it's funny. Thor isn't referencing the larger Marvel universe past the first 20 minutes much, except in imagery, which I kind of enjoy, you know, like you're like, okay, you're not just coming out and being like, here's fucking Captain America, you know, like, which they've never done, but you know, like it's just like, hey, here you go.
Well, they did do it in Thor: The Dark World. Remember the one gag?
Oh God, you're right.
That is one of the funnier jokes in that film, though.
Yes.
Yeah, it's sort of like that sort of hinting at like a wider Marvel universe sort of reminds me of the Phase 1 films back when we tried to be a little subtle about these. Like you watch Captain America, the first Avenger, like, oh, they're looking for the Cosmic Cube. This was before they called it the Tesseract when the Avengers came out. And they're just like, oh, it shows Red Skull talking about like Yggdrasil and the legends of like Norse gods. You're like, oh, what a subtle but organic way to like wink, wink, nudge, nudge at the Norse gods for when we get to Thor.
You're like, wow, I like that, you know? And I especially like, okay, guys, we no, I don't have to get into spoilers, but like we'll get into it later when we talk about the ending. We already
spoiled the Zeus thing, sort of. So
sort of. So yeah, guys, sorry.
We always go balls deep in the spoilers every time we do these.
Sorry, guys, we're going into spoiler territory because we kind of have to when we're talking about this movie. But basically, it's fun. Will it stick in your brain? Probably not so much. Does it have cool moments? Yes. Does it have the weirdest pacing in a Marvel movie in a long time? Probably. Yeah, I would say. But not damaging pacing, just like very weird. just
I would say damaging. I would say damaging, just because no moment of like emotional reverence ever lands in this entire movie, because there's not enough time to let anything sink, because that would get in the way of another joke.
It's true. It's true.
Like, just okay, we have Jane Foster. She has cancer. They actually kept that from the run, which I was afraid they
which I was
do.
like, okay. Now I was like, there you go. At least they're doing that.
And then as soon as she like approaches Mjolnir, like it starts to reform itself, and that's pretty much it. And I know there was stuff cut where like there was more stuff about like her being introduced to the powers and stuff like that, which might have been nice, as opposed to her just getting Mjolnir and like, I'm good at it.
I definitely think that's another thing, another point we have to bring up when we're talking about this movie about rushing. This feels like there's stuff cut from this movie. You know, like
the whole thing just feels like neck break speed. Just go, go, go.
That's what I mean. Like, it's not detrimental because it kind of fucking moves. But like, I see what you mean, because I think the real detrimental thing is, I keep saying it, those first 20 minutes aren't the rest of the movie. Like, you know, that first 20 minutes where he's like finding himself and hanging out with the Guardians, which is cool. It's not the same fucking movie, and it feels like it, you know, like it almost feels like that short ended and I started my Thor movie, you know, like I was like, okay, that's over. Let's go.
And this one is the one where, especially because Thor is already a can of worms when it comes to suspension of disbelief, like Norse god as a superhero, whatever, magic, who gives a shit. But this is the one that really feels like it's pushing it. It's just like, I have this power that I can do that's never been established. Sure, it's convenient for the plot right now, so let's do it.
What do you mean? Which one? Like
using Stormbreaker as a guiding force, the sentience of Stormbreaker, even though
the sentience Stormbreaker is really funny, though. I would say that's some of my favorite jokes in this entire thing, is Stormbreaker being a jealous bitch the entire time. I thought that was straight up hilarious. I was like, I don't care what anybody says. I was laughing every time. I was alone in a theater on a fucking Wednesday afternoon, and I was cackling at the fucking Stormbreaker being a jealous bitch. I thought that was so damn funny that, like, anything else he uses, Stormbreaker's like, no, fuck you. I'll end this whole universe. Fuck you.
I was with the full audience, and it garnered nothing but like a titter.
Really? Damn. I was laughing by myself. I was like, dang. I thought that was super funny. And especially the slow glide in of Stormbreaker at one point, just like
that's like the one gag that's like actually funny to me.
That one
mileage will vary on it. And it's just one of those things where, like, looking at all these bits separate of each other that don't gel together, like, there is a great movie here.
Yes.
That's just completely chopped together. Like, this should be great. Like, all these emotional beats, like what they do choose to take from Aaron's one, what they choose to do on their own, all of this should work, but it's kind of a mess. It's all slapdash. Like, to be honest, Jane dies at the end, makes this huge sacrifice, and it has like no impact for me at all.
I will say that that's one of my, like, kind of the only part that I like hate about this movie is that we spend this whole part of this movie being like, Jane could die, you know, like, from this. And I assumed they, like, and then they go for the big emotional twist of actually killing Jane, and it doesn't feel like anything. You know, like, and you're kind of like, come on, what just happened?
And neither we built this up. Neither does Thor, like, adopting Gorr's kid, which is very touching and great on paper and should make for, like, a really great wrap-up, especially for Thor to, like, finally become an adult.
Yes.
But, again, it's just so flat. It doesn't land. And that's because there's not anything in for impact. Because we're either rushing to the next scene or we're telling a gag that didn't need to be there.
Yes, I think that's really what's going on, is somebody, like, I think that there's a 3-hour cut of this movie. I absolutely think that there's a 3-hour cut, and they chopped it. And I think chopping it is detrimental to this. And it kind of shows in its breakneck fucking speed. So let's talk about one of the most important parts about this, and one of the parts that we're kind of experts about here, is the Jason Aaron run on like adapting into this movie, because it doesn't say that it is that run, but it's got gore. It's got
gore, and
it's got Jane Foster
Thor.
And but they're not, and you know, like, and they have some imagery from it, like the giant god on that like that looks like a gigantic beast that is dead, like several other images like that, and they're doing that, so they're basically doing that run, but they're like, let's sprinkle in a bunch of other things that we want to do, either MCU wise or just for fun. Now, do they do a good job of adapting that? No, they don't. No, they do not. No, if you go in, do not go in thinking that this is going to be Jason Aaron's run. You already got Jason Aaron's run, is what I would say. Is read that, feel satisfied in that great Thor content. Don't worry about there being a live action version of that, because that's not what this is. Now, is there great, like, you know, hold-ups to that run? Yes. There's, like, you know, the way they do gore is pretty much, Christian Bale gore is so out of place in this movie, but he is so just gore, you know, like, or a great Kratos, a little
like the whole bit with, like, where he's just trying to terrify the kids, which, you know, I loved because I love jokes at children's expense. But it's just one of those things where, like, Thor is like, a completely, like, straight, serious, later maniacal, but never playful character. Yes. And I did dig the, like, aesthetic of, like, this, like, man in rags who's just, like, a starving survivor. Yes. But also, it's sort of annoying that they didn't just go for the gore design, like the alien look.
Yeah, that they didn't, like, if they're already doing makeup, like, why didn't we do, like, the alien makeup and
especially
shit
since
that?
Like, because you don't do that from an aesthetic standpoint, it does feel like a repeat of Malekith, who also had, like, the white and black thing going on.
Yeah, I feel that. Obviously gore is scarier and better than all the other Thor villains. This is no question, this is the best Thor villain. Like, sure, Loki gets his own show. He's not a fucking villain. Like, we always knew Loki wasn't an actual villain. And even
he's still the antagonist of the first movie.
He's the antagonist, but like they used to be like, best Marvel villain, and they would vote Loki, and you're like, you just want to fuck him. Like, stop saying, like, stop trying to say that he's the best villain here. He's obviously not. But phase 1 was starved, so, you know, you gotta give it to Loki, I guess. Yeah, but
they
like,
didn't really have much options.
In my eyes, even with this not being a gore from the comics, this is the best Thor villain. He's scary. He's actually a threat. He fucking rips these guys apart basically the whole time. Has great action scenes. I was like, oh, Christian Bale gets to finally flex some action. He hasn't been able to flex a lot of action since, like, Dark Knight Returns, you know? Like,
yeah, but it also would have been Rises,
sorry, my bad.
It also would have been nice to actually have him feel more like a threat, because when you actually look at it on paper, he only kills the one god at the beginning with his origin, and then no one else.
No, I mean, he's killing everybody in town, releasing the symbiote.
Yeah, but that's
everything.
Town. That's Asgard. Who cares? I want to see him travel to other worlds and kill other gods, which apparently was another thing that was cut.
Yes, because they definitely have that scene where they're looking through the channels and they see all the dead gods that he killed and everything, and then you're kind of like, that seems like a lot of work to make a couple of those scenes, guys. You guys didn't shoot him doing that? Like, you guys didn't shoot him like, that was the funny thing to me, is that we didn't see Gore kill a lot of gods here, but we sure saw Thor and friends fucking wipe out a bunch of gods here. And that's another thing that I will give a plus for this movie. The amount of gore, and I put that in quotes because they use, like, gold blood and dark blood for a lot of this, because it's either symbiotes or gods dying. They do a lot of it. They fucking drench this fucking movie in gold and black blood. And that's my major plus to this movie, is that a lot of Marvel movies are overtly violent, but no fucking blood at all. Like, I mean, you go back and watch the original Avengers movie, and the way they're just ripping those Centauri apart, you're like, this is fucking violent. You know, like you're like Jesus Christ. You know,
again,
like,
it just continues to go back to this argument of just like the Marvel heroes kill fucking all the time.
All the time. It's like, not a like, oh man, I can't
even though we get to the point where we realize that Zeus actually survived, like Thor kind of really kills Zeus in cold blood.
He straight up does. Like, Zeus is just like, no, you know. I mean, Zeus is threatening to keep him there, like, I guess, which is a very Zeus thing to do. Be like, aha, you came into my chamber. You stay here forever.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we have to talk about that a little bit. How much fun was Russell Crowe having as Zeus? Endless fun.
Too much fun.
Like, almost too much fun. But I thought that's why I enjoyed those scenes so much, is I was like, I like seeing Russell Crowe actually having fun, you know, because he's never having fun and doesn't seem to like enjoy a lot of what he does. So I was like, look at Russell Crowe's having a good time on this set. Like, I was like, that's nice. And I mean, sure, his like Italian accent was rough, but it was kind of funny in that
an attempt at a Greek accent.
Yeah, attempt at a Greek Italian accent. It was wild. I was like, he's swinging everywhere here.
I know they said they had like shot 2 different versions of like with the accent or without it, just to see how it would go. And I guess it was just funnier with like the Greek accent.
It's so much funnier. Like, of course it is. If he took that seriously, it wouldn't have been the same scene, you know, like, but that's another argument to make, is that could have been like this very serious scene, and it comes out to being like, silly Zeus doing funny things.
Silly.
And like,
again, like
eh. But he does straight up just kill him, and you're kind of like, Jesus Christ, Thor, you know, like,
yeah.
I love the scene where they're like, well, we did just kill Zeus, and they'll probably be hunting us for the rest of our lives. And I was just like, I'm glad you acknowledged that, because I was sitting here being like, they just killed the king of the gods, and nothing bad's gonna happen. Like,
but it's okay, because he actually survived, so it's fine.
Yeah, you're like, it's okay. We have to introduce Hercules somehow, so gotta do it. Which,
God damn it.
I'm okay with them introducing Hercules.
I'm okay with it, and I love Brett Goldstein. He's from Ted Lasso.
Yeah,
but I'm so upset because I wanted him to be Wolverine.
I mean,
like, shit. All right, never mind.
This might be their Wolverine, you know. Actually, releasing Hercules out here, I am kind of excited for Hercules to enter the Marvel universe, though, because it's like, it's one of those things that like, Thor being the only god running around is weird, you know, like, and I kind of need, you know, you need another one.
Expand the pantheon.
Yeah, expand the pantheon. And he's such a leap, you know, that this is like really Hercules, you know, like, you know, like this isn't fucking just, you know, like somebody who got Hercules powers. You're like, no, that's really fucking Hercules.
I also dug the costume and his like hammer. It's just like so fucking Jack Kirby.
Oh yeah, no, I was kind of like, damn, they did it.
Aside from the CG helmets,
which are bad. The Thor helmet that he throws on is bad, and I know it's supposed to look bad, like he's wearing a bad helmet to show off for Jane. But it looks bad CGI-wise, like cheap, like real bad.
Yeah. Like, if it actually looked good, like, design-wise, it's actually kind of a cool helmet.
I don't know.
But
it's also a throwback to old, it's another Jason Aaron reference, right? Isn't that old Thor's costume there?
No,
that he's putting on?
Old Thor just looks like Odin.
Or is that the Berserker helmet that he's putting on there? It's something. It's another reference. I'm sorry if I'm not remembering the exact reference, but that helmet is another reference to another.
But comic. I will say this, like costume design wise, this again in Ragnarok also had this feels so fucking Jack Kirby. Like that might be my favorite of the Thor outfits for him without the helmet. Yes. Just like the blue and the yellow, like
it's
color
nice.
Scheme. Like, it's
nice.
Very Kirby.
I also kind of dig how many costumes Thor goes through in this movie. You know, in a world where, like, we had Robert Downey Jr. in, like, 2 outfits in all the Thor movies, all the Iron Man movies, you're like, oh, thank God these main characters can be in multiple outfits in one fucking movie. Jesus Christ, you know. Like,
You're talking about Tony, right?
Yes, Tony. Like, mostly just suits. You know, like,
I will push back on that because there are subtle differences to every single Iron Man suit.
I mean, yes, to every suit. I'm talking about like him just walking around and being himself, which that's the difference between Thor and Iron Man, is Thor just walks around in the armor all the time, you know, like, is that like there's not much variation there, you know, like it's not much, you know, like except when they show young Tony and he's wearing a t-shirt, you know, like you're like, oh, t-shirt Tony.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, you're just like, not much variation on your main character. He doesn't get to wear a lot of different suits except for the main, like the suits, you know, like,
yeah.
But Thor just gets to, especially in this movie, just be like suit, other thing, you know, like just keeps changing costumes.
Yeah, and they're definitely better here than they were in Ragnarok. Like, one of the biggest like moments for me in that, it's a little thing, but like it sort of cuts the suspension, is when he puts on his breastplate in Ragnarok when he's like suiting up and he's talking to Hulk and stuff, and it just looks like a plastic rubber prop.
Yeah, and you're
as opposed to actual armor.
Yeah, it's bad.
And
I do like the space Viking look early in the movie too. I thought that was a cool look. The Guns N' Roses look, basically.
Yeah, like they said, like it nails like both Ragnarok and this especially sort of nail that like fantasy creature / knight painted on the side of an old van sort of vibe and aesthetic, and I dig that. And it's especially prevalent in the credits.
So especially the credits. So let's talk about the music here, because I think that's an important thing to bring up when we're talking about this, because they're all trying to emulate Guardians of the Galaxy, which revived the songs that were in that movie. And the same thing sort of happened for Thor Ragnarok, you know, like these are 80 songs, you know, like that's the thing they're trying to get at here, is that these are all for like 30-40-year-olds, so there's like all these 80 songs reaching into their lives. So it's like I see what they're doing, and like, you know, that's the age of all the Avengers, so like that makes sense that they're listening to this music, you know, like you're like, okay. And I love 80s music, so I'm totally okay with that. But they're all trying to emulate Guardians of the Galaxy, which worked, which is a well thought out, worked for the scenes music. Thor Ragnarok just kind of goes, we'll throw this music in because it's fun, and it still works. Here, I don't like, sure, Welcome to the Jungle is an iconic song, and yes, I do acknowledge that kids these days don't have many references to Welcome to the Jungle, but I feel like we have a lot of movies that use the fucking song Welcome to the fucking Jungle, you know?
Yeah,
like,
it's not as bad as, say, like hearing Fortunate Son in a movie where I'm just like fucking done with it.
You're like, come on, stop this.
I'm
like,
definitely already that way with Spirit in the Sky.
Yeah, yes, I know. Great
song,
that might
but, like,
be
enough.
That might be one of like the most licensed songs of all time. That song gets used all the fucking time. You're like, oh yeah, Spirit in the Sky. But here the songs, it's like they're fun, but they're so forgettable in the scene, you know? It doesn't feel attached. That's the thing, is Guardians of the Galaxy felt like this was something James Gunn curated himself and you know, chose for these scenes as he wrote them. These feel like, oh, what's a fun thing to throw on here? Cool. I love Welcome to the Jungle.
That's the primary difference, but that's also kind of indicative of the entire movie for me, especially when you directly compare it to like the Guardians films, which is to compare.
Another thing about
like,
the first 20 minutes is it feels like a Guardians film, and then it goes into a Thor's film. You're like, what is happening? Like,
and you could also compare it to like Edgar Wright's work, especially with Baby Driver and Last Night in Soho, where like there's tact and there's thought behind the music that's chosen.
Yep.
And there's also, in terms of even beyond the music, a balance between your ha-has and your genuine moments. Like Love and Thunder feels like the scene in Ragnarok where Asgard is destroyed and they just kind of wallow in its destruction, and then Korg makes a fucking joke. Love and Thunder in a lot of ways feels like that for an entire movie, and it bugs the shit out of me. A little bit, because we're dealing with like there's just an Asgardian town, and then all the fucking kids get stolen, which should be very serious, but it kind of is played off like, we'll get them kids back, don't worry about it, you know? Like, that's Heimdall's son. When was he established? It's Heimdall's son.
And then to bring Heimdall in the post-credit scene, and also just bring in Valhalla at all, is so
It's a slippery slope because when you aim for like a Valhalla or like a heaven or some sort of afterlife equivalent like that, the best thing you can do is not actually show it, because if you show it, it sort of undermines its like mysticism and like sense of separation.
Yeah, I think that it's sure it's a funny scene, but it kind of first off negates pretty much your whole Jane Foster storyline,
which already has less impact than it should.
Yes, and so you basically take all that out of it, and then you have this whole thing with Heimdall's son the whole movie, and then Heimdall's up in Valhalla. Like, you're just like, wait, you know, like, and they had to show him. It's so it's a waste of an after credit scene to me. It's one of those things where I was just like, that almost took away from the movie more than it added to the movie, you know, like where the other one was fun. This was just like, what the fuck? Why did we do this?
It's so annoying, like how much Jane Foster's arc in this film doesn't land, because a lot of it on paper has elements that should work.
It's actually really like, I think Natalie Portman does a good job delivering it. That's the thing. It's like, I think she does a good job delivering. To be honest, this very serious plot.
Hemsworth and Portman have more chemistry in this movie than they did in the first two movies combined.
Seriously. Like the Thor Dark World is like, there's no chemistry at all, and I feel like here it works, you know, finally, you know, like you're like, oh, thank God, you know, like you're like, okay, they have some chemistry, this is working, you know, like this is actually feels real, you know,
like some of its better moments are just like those flashbacks of them just being a couple living together and stuff like that. You see, that's the more intimate stuff to help you like ladle on and have some emotional beats. And even then, when there are jokes in that, like it's organic.
Yeah, I liked those bits a lot because I thought they were just going to rely on the other movies' emotional setup of Jane and Thor and just kind of go with that instead of like doing this new thing. And I like that a lot. Actually.
And that was like some of like the best stuff from the Aaron run, even before like we had known that like Jane Foster Thor was going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Jane had already had cancer and she was much further along in her chemo. Like she had lost her hair and stuff. Yeah. And you got this really intimate moment where like Thor and her just talk as they watch the stars. At this point in the comics, they're like old friends, haven't been together for years because Thor's married to Sif.
Yeah.
But it's still just like, we have a history and I just want to be here for you, even though I can't physically do anything to help you.
Yeah.
And then we got Jane Foster Thor later, which is like, oh shit. Also, I love that they made the Lady Thor joke, where it's just like, it's not Lady Thor, it's Mighty Thor.
I did like that a lot. I was like, and it was cheesy to do like, I'm trying to find my catchphrase, like how that was cheesy. That was the worst writing in probably the whole movie, was like her trying to find a catchphrase. It did come to that Mighty Thor scene, which was actually quite good, but that wasn't talking about catchphrases, guys. If we had talked about trying to find a name for her the whole movie, that would have worked, but you didn't. You talked about catchphrases. And then the big emotional moment at the end is them being like, her whispering his catchphrase to him, and he's like, that's perfect. And I immediately thought,
this fucking lost in translation shit.
Yeah,
like, what?
I was like, first off, yes, I was like, wow, this is outside the fucking Thor movie to like not let the audience decide, you know, like what was said there. But I immediately was like, the memes, if they don't make a scene where she like lean in and she goes, I got the perfect catchphrase, and she goes, it's Thorbin time, then I give up on the internet if they don't have that by like tomorrow.
Hail Hydra.
Yeah, right. Like, exactly. This scene is gonna get memed to fuck the minute people actually like get a copy of this thing. Because I was like, this is a very emotional scene, almost, and they like elevated by not saying the catchphrase, and I'm like, okay, like we're like really doing something, and then like I don't know. And even Gore like choosing to bring back his daughter at the end, which you kind of knew he was going to do, even if you've read the Jason Aaron run, you know, like you knew that he was going to, like, you knew he's going to change his mind a little at the end. But the way they went around it, like just because Mighty Thor was dying, you're like,
yeah, it doesn't work. That's kind of the thing.
It doesn't
just like
work.
all of this works on paper. All of this,
yes.
I would read in a script and be like, okay, that works. But then by the time you get to filming and all the shit that was probably cut that like undermines any emotional moment to like sort of build up, just kind of leaves the whole thing feeling flat.
Yes.
And also, this is a different aside, but the aesthetic of like that world when they go to confront eternity.
Yes.
If anyone going to see this movie has played Kingdom Hearts 3, they're gonna fucking laugh when they see it. Because the aesthetic of that world is right out of fucking Kingdom Hearts 3. It's like the exact same like sky and the reflective water and stuff. I'd like had to hold back a laugh.
I was like, what the fuck? I know this level. Like, I was like, wait a minute. And are they saying? So I wanted to ask you this question. Do you think they were saying that was Galactus in the middle of the universe there?
No, Eternity is
his brother or something. That's what I thought. I was like, he's wearing the Galactus helmet there, but like, obviously that might be just like a brother, you know? Like,
that's just straight up like a Jack Kirby thing. Yeah. Like a lot of people have that like big head with like horns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think they're related because like the whole like pantheon of like Marvel stuff is not my forte. Yeah. But you have stuff like the Celestials and stuff, and Galactus I think is part of that grander like pantheon.
Which I kind of dug that because it's another thing where I was saying that like the end of the movie is just visual references to the rest of the Marvel universe, you know, like that, where it was like, oh, what is eternity? You know, like, is this is this Galactus's brother? You know, like, is fiddling with this going to unleash Galactus, which I want, you know, like, I know everyone's like, we're getting to Secret War
stuff, like it's inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing to me is that like we're building to him, so let's start laying some groundwork.
And we've already like established like the Celestials and Eternals, so that you could straight up just have Galactus show up and people will just buy it.
That's what I was thinking when Eternity came up at the end there. I was like, they really could just throw Galactus into a movie, and I would be like, there's that motherfucker, you know, like, I'd be like, all right, that makes sense, you know, like, I was like, okay, that we're at a point where we could introduce him if we wanted to, but we don't have to yet, you know, like, I'm not fucking being like, give me Galactus, you know, like, but, you know, because we still have fucking Secret Wars to happen before we do stuff with Galactus.
Not necessarily. We fucking move and jump around all the time with the MCU. Nothing says that we have to do Secret Wars and stuff first.
Well, Secret Wars is
on the actual docket, but
that's
like,
the actual thing coming up next.
Who knows if it'll actually be, you know, Secret Wars on the scale that Secret Wars should be, especially it being a show and everything.
I know. That's the thing here when we're talking about adaptation is that like, even though we didn't get Jason Aaron's run here, we got some of the feels from that. And, you know, you're like, okay, you still walk around being like, cool, I got some of the Jason Aaron run there. But like, if they do Secret Wars and they don't do anything that's Secret War-ish, you know, you're kind of like, I didn't. You know, this doesn't feel right, you know, like you're just like but my thing about the ending is that it is a good wrap up with the daughter, but the Gore's ending, Jane dying, is
Love and
rushed.
Thunder title drop doesn't earn it. It doesn't earn it.
Definitely doesn't earn it. That's the thing is I feel like there's a lot of fun to be had, but overall this is no like, wow, this might be my favorite Thor, you know, my favorite Marvel movie type of moment, you know, like this isn't like you're walking out of Shang-Chi and you're like, this might be one of my favorite Marvel movies, which is a fair argument, you know, like being like, yeah, this was really cool. It's like, this
to me is definitely like the weakest film of Phase 4 so far. I know people disagree on me like that because people really fucking hate Eternals.
Yeah, well, yeah,
but
I would say I had a much better time than Eternals. And does Black Widow count as this phase? Yeah, then I had a much better time here than Black Widow and all that. And what's the other?
I would sooner watch Black Widow again. Black Widow is a lot more cohesive. It has a lot more like intense, even though it has its own like clumsiness. Like this whole fucking movie is clumsy.
Yes, I would say that's the main issue. I would say is that Marvel fans will come out of this movie having a good time. Takeda, sorry, how do you say his name?
Taika Waititi.
Taika fans will be very pleased because they get basically another full-on comedy from him. You know,
yeah. But this is.
But will normal moviegoers come out of this feeling satisfied? No. You know,
even
like
for his own work, this is kind of weak. This might be his weakest movie. It's like either that or Boy, which was his first, and even then, Boy's not bad.
Now, that's the thing is like, I wasn't angry walking out of this, you know, like, and I'm still not angry about this movie, you know, like I'm not. It's like that's the thing. It's like, but. Does it even, you know, like when we're comparing the other Marvel movies, Multiverse of Madness and Spider-Man No Way Home were these big swings. And this is like a bunt, a sort of thing where but they go in for the swing and then switch to the bunt, you know, like where they're like, oh yeah, we'll go for the home run hit of bringing in Jane. And then, no, we bunting because we would rather keep this contained, sort of, really, is like sort of not bring this out to the greater everything, you know, like it's just, it doesn't feel needed is my main problem, you know, like is that this is a Thor movie that has some of the biggest emotional beats for Thor and it doesn't feel needed, you know,
and none of them land. That's the problem.
Yeah, I think a lot of the jokes land. I was laughing often. More than I expected. I really was. I came in being like, I know it's going to be a comedy, but I don't know how often I'll actually like laugh out loud. And I was laughing a lot.
It didn't garner much laughs when I went to go see it.
It matters who you see it with. And sometimes I'm the best audience to see a movie with.
But yeah, like other than like the occasional like laugh here and there, it was pretty stark.
Really? That's funny.
Yeah. You could just feel it in the energy by the end of it. It was just like, eh.
Yeah, big eh. I obviously had more fun than I think most people will have. I laughed at the jokes.
Divisive.
I did cackle, dude, because I know we've talked about on this show before that I hate the way Thor just spins his hammer and launches himself off. In this movie, they deliberately were like, we're never doing that. We're going to do more ridiculous things than that. And Thor riding Stormbreaker like a witch's broom is fucking hilarious, by the way. I was literally dying when he just gets on and is like, see you guys there with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I was like, what the fuck just happened? I was like, what? And like, they never do the spin and jump thing again. It's just... you know, jump into the air and down, you know, it's never a spin, which has always been my like gripe against Thor's movements.
From an aesthetic point, I also dug like the gimmick of like the shattered Mjolnir, how it can break into pieces and then reform itself, because that definitely wasn't a thing in the run because Mjolnir wasn't broken.
Like, so my other thing about this movie is, and I think you have to say this as guys who know like behind the scenes stories, is that obviously Natalie Portman didn't want to do Thor Ragnarok. You know, like that was always said that she didn't want to do Thor Ragnarok. So her coming back for Thor Love and Thunder, we kind of knew she wasn't going to be Thor moving forward. You know, like we're in a phase where they were introducing the next generation of heroes constantly. You kind of know Natalie Portman doesn't like doing these Marvel movies, and she kind of wanted to step away, you know, like, so I knew going in that she was not going to continue on. I kind of want her to. Do I think that ruins the emotional everything of this movie? Yes. If you have her go on, you've ruined pretty much the entire.
But here's the thing: the emotional everything of this movie doesn't land already. So what would it matter?
I know, but it's like it's even more just like, nope, doesn't matter, you know, like it does, you know, like, and you're just kind of like, damn, like that sucks, you know, like that it's like, because one of those things that I would have really loved this Young Avengers team with like Natalie Portman also being there too, you know, as like this weird adult on the Young Avengers team. I kind of would have loved that, you know, like
it would also be like an easier transition since, you know, she's been present since the first phase, so it wouldn't feel as hard to pivot.
Right? And she could basically lead a movie, you know, like that would be cool. But you know, Natalie Portman doesn't like doing these. She wants to do art projects. She wants to do art, you know, like films, you know, like she doesn't want to do these Marvel movies but they do pay the fucking bills to be able to do those movies, you know, and do art.
The whole like one for me, one for them mentality.
Yeah. And I think I did Boston Calling, and I got to meet Natalie Portman one time because and she's absolutely as beautiful as she is on screen. One of those things where you're just like, I can't believe how beautiful you are. You're kind of hard to look at, like a sun, you know, like you're like but she's very into making art films and working with other artists. She was like doing stuff with St. Vincent there and stuff like that, like making a movie together. And I think that's what she's obviously more passionate about than another Thor movie, you know? So, like, I knew that this was going to be it, you know? Like, there was no, like, oh, yeah, I'll come. It's the same thing with Star Wars. We're never going to get Padme just, like, back in, you know, as a Force ghost at some point, like we got Liam Neeson, you know? Like, you're just like, no, we ain't gonna get that. She doesn't like doing it, you know? Like, and that's, for me, totally okay. For the story, it adds to more of the problems of what's going on here, where it's like the rushing editing of this, the heavy cuts, the behind the scene drama of you know, Natalie Portman not wanting to do more, and I say drama, but that's not really true. It's just kind of like, nope, and you know,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. And it's like kind of one of those things that I know Waititi is very busy. You know, like he is so busy. They're giving him like basically his own Star Wars movies.
He's had
writing all of What We Do in the Shadows.
He's a producer on What We Do in the Shadows. He does Our Flag Means Death, which not only he co-creator for, but he's also acting in it.
Yeah, and they just got another season of that. Like, and he's also doing a bunch of animated films and voicing for them. The man is busy, and like I'm so happy for that because he is wicked funny and what I liked about this movie and why I think it stands above the other Thor movies is that, like Thor Ragnarok, we get his very cinematic tendencies, and that's what elevates this movie in any way, you know, like, is that it's not just a Marvel movie, you know, like you get moments that you're like, wow, this is something a little beyond, you know, like Waititi is bringing in something that's very cinematic. It's very visual. It's very, you know, like even just the child cage alone. I was like, what balls does this guy have to put the child cage in this? Like,
I think I can excuse that in Ragnarok, despite Ragnarok's problems. I can't really excuse it here because nothing around it really works.
No, I was kind of like, he's still able to do a lot of great cinematic things.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in a bubble. They're all in bubbles.
I think you summed it up. There's a lot of great parts here. There's so many good parts. Now, putting them all together is the issue here.
Is it a good whole? Not really.
Not really. So that's why, you know, when I'm rating it, I'm being generous when I'm giving it a 7, but it's more like a 6.5.
I came out of it
or a 6.
Pretty much the same way you were, and then it's only soured for me. It only feels like it's going to sour for me more and more.
Yeah, that's the thing is I almost don't want to. It's one of those things where you're just like, But okay, so my most important part that in my rating for this is that all the other Thor movies are adultish. This is not an adult, which is also to the detriment of this movie. This is not an adult Thor movie. This is a Thor movie for kids, for teens almost, you know, like, but for kids, like, and they know that because Thor was so funny, and they, you know, they want to see Thor be more funny, you know, like, so they know kids are going to see this movie. This is a more, and I say that with light terms, kid friendly movie, but also it's the most blood-soaked. Gore is actually terrifying.
With cancer as a subplot, so
you're like, but it's like very much a kid film in a lot of ways, and not in a bad way, just in a way that it's constantly wanting to have fun. You know,
the scene where the kids get like Thor's powers and they're all like fighting together is honestly a great
it's a great scene.
Paper. But again, it's all just like in bubbles. This is great here. This is great here. This is great here. As a whole, it doesn't work.
Yes, I would say that's the best way to describe it. That's the best way to sum it up.
And it's more frustrating because I feel like more so than any of the other Thor movies, this really had the potential to be like a great one.
Yeah. No,
because all of this like works separately.
It's rushed. It's rushed. Is the main thing. Either it was cut or it was rushed.
Like Natalie Portman and Hemsworth are great in this. The big end scene, like I love the fucking Sin City style, like black and white planet as they like fight through like a negative zone. That was dope.
That was dope as hell. I was like,
even the idea of like Thor having to become a father.
Most of the action in this, that's the other thing I will give credit for. The action is pretty fucking good, pretty much throughout. You know, like pretty much throughout, the action is really solid. You know, like you're not just sitting there being like, I haven't seen an action scene in a while. It's like, no, it is happening. And, you know, they are going at it most of the time. And it's really cool. Like Gore is actually a good fighter most of the time. I will say that, you know, like, but again, these scenes sort of feel out of nowhere at times. You know, they don't connect super well. They don't, you know, like there's an emotional scene and then the fight scene, you know, like it just keeps moving.
I think like the most annoying joke to me, more than the goats, because like the goats are the goats, but that stupid fucking scene where it's like it's Valkyrie talking with Jane and they're just talking about what they have packed in their bag and they're just like, what's that, a grenade? It's like, no, it's a Bluetooth speaker, and they just fucking play a song and just stand there awkwardly.
I thought that was cute, but yes, it doesn't feel I don't know. It felt out of place. You're like,
that one's a straight up groaner. That fucking joke was so cringy.
And especially because it comes after, like literally seconds after the scene where she's revealing that the Thor, that Mjolnir is not actually curing her or anything. It's just holding off the cancer, you know, like, and you're like, well, that's not fucking good.
And this film, in a lot of ways, it feels like a culmination of like the things we've complained about with the MCU a lot of the time, of just like that fucking being so afraid to just being genuine and just be harrowing for a goddamn moment before we make a gag.
That's the thing here, is that this slips in genuine moments, but slips it in, you know, like straight up just zip, you know, like, but not actually feeling it, you know, like sort of like how WandaVision had all these great written moments of like, what is grief but love persisting, you know, and you're like, fuck, I'm crying over in this bitch. And then the next episode is just Thor Vision punch Vision, you know, like Agatha.
Excuse you, it ends in a philosophical quandary.
Yes, of course. Bringing up the thesis, the ship of Theseus. You're like, okay. Right on. All right. You're like, this is a robot that can scour the entire internet, but yes, them discussing it then and there. I
don't know if Vision can scour the entire internet like Ultron can.
No? I mean, I assumed because he's basically Ultron, you know, like.
Well, he was an Ultron like vessel that Ultron never actually got to go into.
So I assumed he had the same, you know, that sort of capabilities, but I may be stretching. It's a good question. But overall, I think that this is sort of a messy film, but a fun film. It's fun. I have no malice, but I will say that our rating straight goes to stream this or buy it on sale. I think that's the obvious for our rating scale of it's perfect. Buy the special edition, pre-order it, get it on sale, and nope. This is a straight pre-order. This is a straight, sorry, not pre-order. Get it on sale or wait for Disney Plus because it's fun. Do you need to see it in theaters? You know, like there's some moments that look good in theaters. Do you need to see it in theaters? You know, like, yes, is crossing the space, like all of space look really good on there, and those like, and the God Chamber scene looks so good in theaters. Yes. Do you need to see it in theaters? You know, like, and that is kind of, I feel like Phase 4, I mean, is this the last Phase 4 film? How many more Phase 4 things do we got going on here?
What is next? No, Phase 4 isn't over. We still got like Quantumania and stuff.
Yeah, we still have Quantumania.
Not to mention like other
sum up. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is Phase 4 is kind of inflated really big, and we have let some things fall through the cracks, and I feel like the rushing of Thor: Love and Thunder was unneeded. It didn't need to be shoved into Phase 4 like it really didn't, you know, like it's like, sure, you had to be like Guardians of the Galaxy, but you could have been like in Phase 5 and just did that whole Guardians of the Galaxy thing and been like, it happened before this stuff, you know, like you really could have just been like, this happened before, you know, like there was no need to rush this movie, and they rushed it, and you feel it.
It shows.
It shows. I had fun, but is it, you know, woo, wow, best Thor? No. But that's the problem here, obviously, is that all these Thor movies aren't super great. You know, like,
no, like none of the Thor movies
do like
ever really
Thor Ragnarok. I do like
Ragnarok is fun, but like even then,
it's not great. It's not one of the great Marvel movies, you know, in my
people
mind.
Will try and say it, but like
you're like, it's
take away it's funny.
Take away
how funny it is. There's not really much to it.
I hated that they continued the joke with Matt Damon here. Like, even, like, I liked that he was in that scene where they recreated it. Why did we do the recreation scene again? We didn't need it. But also, why did he come up and ask for doing a play at the time then? You know, like, it was
I thought it was funny that, like, they just established him as just this actual recurring Asgardian.
Yeah.
Like an artiste. I didn't mind that, and I also kind of saw it as like Waititi making fun of his own shit since he was making fun of Dark World the last time.
Yeah, right? Like, it's kind of a big, like, haha, isn't this funny, you know, like, sort of thing. And I do, of course, this will be helpful in, like, for people who are going and haven't seen these other movies, you know, like, I get that. That's what they were going for, but at the same time, you're like, nobody who hasn't seen a Marvel movie is going to see fucking Thor: Love and Thunder, you know? Like, this is, I don't know who this scene is for, you know? Like, you're like, but whatever, fuck it. It's a messy movie. Wait till Disney Plus. I had fun. I laughed. Is it great? No. Is it good? You know, like, and basically, like, I feel like I have so much to talk about with this movie.
I had moments of fun.
Yeah, I had moments of fun. But Sean, you could describe that for most of your life. I had moments of fun.
I have plenty of fun. It's just not what traditional means.
And but yeah, thank you guys for checking out this episode. Another fucking Marvel property covered this episode. We try to keep this one short because it's a comedy, so it's fucking hard to review. Where some people, and I'll say it again, is that some people will not find this fun or funny at all, and they'll just be pissed, you know, like. But
I'm not like
you chuckled
livid about
a little
it,
bit, but
I'm not like I'm not straight up angry about it, but I am somewhat frustrated.
Yes,
because
I do. I'm not angry, which I see people
I can
being
see the
angry.
pieces of this and how this could have worked, but it doesn't.
Yes,
and that's almost more annoying when you see like the potential like right there.
Yeah, you're like, it's not even just the script being good. There's like scenes. You're like, there's scenes in here that could make a good movie, and it's just not. It's the same thing as like, this sort of feels like Sonic 2 in the way that you're like, there's 40 minutes of a good Thor movie in here. But it's spaced out, you know, like, same thing as Sonic. There's a good Sonic movie in here. It's just spaced the fuck out.
But it's one of those things where, like, I'm not huge on it. Yes. I'm expecting, like, if I do decide to watch it again, it'll probably get even worse.
Yeah, I think so,
but,
too.
But at the same time, like, whatever. The MCU has had good and bad, and this is far from the worst thing they've made.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you for checking out this episode. Be sure to get ready for more AFI Top 100 lists that we're continuing on soon. We're going to do the right thing very soon. Check out all the other episodes of all the Marvel stuff. If you're listening to this is your first time listening to our Marvel content, we have shit tons, lots of Marvel reviews. Check those out. We pretty much do everything that comes out, except for we were not going to do Captain Marvel, but you know, or what, Miss Marvel.
I've heard Miss Marvel's actually pretty good.
I don't know if it's just Dan Slott being like, I liked it though.
Dan Slott, like people who I expected to go into it, like who were really down on the idea, are just like, it's actually way better than it's advertised. So I'm like, okay.
Okay. Well, if we do an episode about it, you'll know that we actually liked it. But guys, thank you. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on any podcast platform. Go to galaxyofgeek.com to see every episode of the podcast in all its forms. Galaxyofgeek.com is where you can see all the podcasts and some writings and all the shit that we post. You can go to galaxygeek.com. Be sure to check out our personal social medias on Instagram and Twitter. I am Frank.
Mod Karaka.
And I have Gundam, where I post all these fucking gunplay. And then, guys, thank you for supporting the show. Really, I appreciate it. And we've seen an uptick lately of listeners, so we really appreciate your support. And we want to continue doing great stuff for you. So get ready for more AFI Top 100 and more Marvel stuff, I guess, as we get towards that. And then we'll have some Star Wars stuff with the new Star Wars things coming up soon in August and July. So with Andor, is that the fucking show?
Yeah, Andor's rolling around.
Andor's this in the next couple bit. But thank you guys, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Adios.
See you next time.